Let me call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for March 8th, 2021. This is a little bit of a special meeting. We'll go through some notes on process here before we get started. We're here to consider some amendments to the UDO, and so we'll have process to lay out and some presentation tonight. But let's start with the roll call.
Great. Whistler?
Here.
Kenzie?
Here.
St. John?
Here.
Kate?
Here.
Burrell?
Here.
Herrera?
Here.
Cochran?
Here.
Sandberg?
Here.
Seabour?
Here.
And Enright Randolph.
Here.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So we do have a quorum and we will continue. There are no minutes to be approved tonight. Are there any reports, resolutions, or communications?
Sure. I think I will do a little bit of housekeeping here. So welcome everyone to Plan Commission. As Brad said, tonight is a little different than some of our other meetings. We are looking at several petitions, and they are all related to the zoning map and text amendment update process we've been undergoing for some time now. So thank you everyone for being here. Just a couple of items. We've already had some questions here in the chat. Typically how we run the meeting on Zoom is that we turn your cameras off unless you are one of the Plan Commission members or staff. And we also turn off your sound. If you, when it is time for public comment, President Whistler will review the procedure at that time, typically also. But in order to queue to make a public comment, you can use the Zoom raise hand function on the bottom right of your screen, I believe is where it's located. Or you can send me a chat indicating that you want to make sure that you are able to make your public comment. And that is how we will do those. Then we will have some more discussion here in a minute about how we're going to get through these 10 ordinances tonight and in the preceding nights. I don't know if Brad, we want to see if anyone else has reports before we do that.
Sure, yeah, I think that would be appropriate. Are there any other reports or communications from other commissioners or elsewhere on staff? Okay, well, seeing none, then we will continue with the setup here. We do have 10 items on the agenda, and just to be clear, we are not going to get through all 10 of these agenda items tonight. And the primary focus tonight will be on just introducing the package as a whole and tackling some of the easier amendments, primarily those that are non-controversial or in most cases just simple technical corrections. But we do have a total of 10 different items. So let me just run through those quickly and introduce them. They are ZO01-21. These are the technical text amendments. ZO02-21. These are amendments to UDO Chapter 2 to the zoning districts. ZO03-21. These are amendments to Chapter 3, the use regulations. ZO04-21. Amendments to Chapter 4, Development Standards and Incentives. ZO05-21, amendments to Chapter 5 of the UDO, Subdivision Standards. ZO06-21, amendments to Chapter 6, Administration and Procedures. ZO07-21, amendments to Chapter 7, Definitions. ZO08-21, which is to delete the RE district zone. ZO09-21, text amendments to the Duplex, Triplex, and Four-Plex sections. and ZO 10-21, which is adoption of the new zoning map. So clearly that's a lot more than we're going to get to in one meeting. So we have outlined a series of meetings in an order in which we would like to address these issues. Again, we're going to try to just cover some of the easier ones tonight, and then leave some time for commissioners to digest and make some additional amendments if they like before our next meeting. So with that, Jackie, would you like to kind of take it to a little next level of detail here about the schedule?
Sure, yes. Okay, so as Brad said, we do have 10 petitions on the agenda, the map update, and then 9 separate text amendment packages that cover a wide range of information. Those text amendments were split into the 9 kind of chunks, split by either into the first one is what we see as purely technical amendments, and then other amendments by chapter. And then we have the 2 near the end that are our larger text amendment subjects. They warranted their own petition number. So that's the RE changes, and then the Plex proposal changes. So let me share our proposed schedule here. Okay, so the idea is that tonight we will give a presentation of the map and text proposals, an overview, a broad overview of all 10 petitions in order to start the public hearing process. But as Brad said, of course, we're not going to be able to address everything in one hearing. So we did work to put together this proposed calendar of how to see the rest of the requests over the next few weeks. So tonight, we are proposing to do the broad overview and then start discussion and possible vote for 3 of the maybe easier petitions. So ZO0121, the technical amendments, ZO0221 Chapter 2, which only has 1 amendment, and ZO0521 Chapter 5, which has a handful of amendments, but nothing very complicated. So we will try to get through those this evening. This is, of course, as Brad said, another advantage of spreading them out is giving more time to the public and plan commissioners to kind of review those petitions that are maybe more complicated or need extra thought, to be able to, for the plan commission members, compose or discuss amendments, and for the public to be able to understand the request and reach out as necessary if they want to submit comment. So the idea would be that we'll meet tonight for the 3 I mentioned. Next week, we would not meet. Then we would have the week off, and plan commissioners would submit as many of the text amendments as they have together, hopefully almost all of them, by close to the end of that week, so the staff has time to look them over and put them together for public consumption before the next meeting, which would be March 22nd, which is a Monday. And at that meeting, we would expect to get through the next 5 chapters that are, or excuse me, next 5 petitions that are chapter based, and then also the 4 that are chapter based, and then the one that's the deletion of the RE zoning district. So again, if that's not possible, we can bump to the next meetings. The next meeting would then be March 25th. If we make it through the 5 I mentioned previously, we would discuss ZO0921 at that meeting, which is the Plex amendment. And then the next week is when we would look at the map. And then we can go out farther than the dates listed here, but we have worked with the Plan Commission to at least highlight these dates as dates that we will potentially definitely meet and or potentially meet together. So this is the proposed schedule here. I do need to say here that by Plan Commission rule, each of these petitions requires 2 hearings. So after we review them, take public comment and questions from Plan Commission, any amendments that come up during the hearing, when it would normally be time to vote on them, we will need to take a vote about whether or not to suspend the rule requiring a second hearing. So that vote has to be unanimous. Obviously, you aren't voting necessarily that you're going to vote yes on the petition, but whether or not you think that all of the information that you need was covered in the first night. And if so, then we would go on and have our regular vote for that petition. So we will do that with each of these petitions, and that will also then, of course, dictate some potential changes if Plan Commission can't agree that enough ground has been covered that the petition can be voted upon. And legal, Mike, you can step in if I have said any of that incorrectly.
No, Jackie, I think that's a good summary. If
Okay.
there are any questions, we can address those from the commissioners.
Great. Does anyone have any questions about that? Any commissioners?
I think you covered it well there, Jackie. So just to recap quickly, we have 10 petitions to consider, and we'll be considering them over the course of several meetings here. That means there will be at least 10 opportunities for public comment, perhaps more if we are debating amendments to these amendments. But we, in order to make it through this, we really need to make sure that all of the comments from both commissioners and from the public are stick to the topic at hand. It'll be really easy for us to get off course here and drag this out for a long time if we don't stick to the topic at hand. So I'm going to be asking everybody to try to stay focused on the individual motions that are in front of us. We have dedicated an entire meeting to the discussion of the Plex amendments because we know that there's a particular interest in that and expect a lot of public comment on that. And so I believe that, Jackie, if you could just remind me, was it the 25th?
Yes. Let me pull that
So the 25th is currently dedicated to discussion of the Plexes. We have a number of items on the previous meeting prior to that on the 22nd. So we'll need to be diligent in getting through all of those items on the 22nd if we are going to be able to stick to dedicating an entire meeting on the 25th to discussion of the Plex amendments. So our typical rule is that we don't introduce any new motions after 9 p.m. We will need to suspend that rule if we need to in order to go later to keep things on schedule. We do have extra time built into the end. It just means that if on the 22nd we don't get through 3, 4, 6, 7, and the RE, that those items will move to the next meeting, and the meeting on the 25th we'll have to pick up and finish those items before we move on to the Plexes. So we'll just keep moving through these as we can from one meeting to the next. If we need, we've got 2 extra meetings at the end. Hopefully we won't need to go that long. We'll be able to get through all of this, but we'll have some decisions to make along the way as to when we end these meetings if we don't get through everything on the agenda before 9 p.m. I suspect tonight that won't be much of an issue because we only have a few items, but we really wanted to just set this up so that the staff had a chance to present, everyone's got a chance to digest that presentation, and then we have some time between today and the next meeting to consider any additional amendments we might want to see. So any questions about the process or procedure from commissioners before we move to the staff presentation? Okay. I think.
All right, I have one question.
Oh, go ahead, Julie.
I just want to make sure that we are clear to the public about how to make public comments and how long. I see there was another question in the chat. So if we could clarify the staging for that, and then how long?
Yeah, so when we get to public comment, if you'd like to make a comment, you can click on the participants tab, and at the bottom of the participants window, there should be a button that says raise hand. And if you raise your hand, then Jackie will recognize you when it is your turn to make comment. Public comment is 5 minutes per commenter. And so if you have any trouble with that button and you don't see that your hand is raised, I would encourage you to send a message in the chat as well. If for some reason you don't feel like you've been recognized, we don't have cameras on, so we won't be able to see you. So you'll need to use that raise hand button or send a chat message in order to be recognized for public comment. But we'll just move through everyone who's indicated they wish to speak, and each person will get 5 minutes on each of the petitions when the time for public comment comes.
Okay. Anything else? Just looking at a couple chats here. Anything else from the commission?
I think we're ready to roll.
Okay. I just want to make sure I get these questions answered really quickly. Reactions button. So you click, it sounds like participants and then a reactions button, and that's where the raised hand is, I think, on some people's versions. Oh, I did want to say, thank you for the questions. Where can we find out more information? In the chat at the very top, there are 2 links. One is to the story map that I will be going through tonight. So you can follow along or go to it later to reference what we're discussing. And then there is also a link to the public hearings draft webpage where all of the petitions are split. Their red lines are all there, as well as a story map that indicates the changes to this petition from the fall 2020 petition. So some extra information there for anyone who's interested. Okay, let's see. Ryan, can you chat everyone? If so,
Yeah, I'll send those.
Can you put those links back in, because they're not in there for people who came after. That's what I wasn't sure if they would stick. So we'll throw those back in. Thank you guys. All right. So I will go ahead and start. Tonight, as Brad said, we will be discussing the public hearings draft of the text and map amendments. Oh, I'm so sorry. Before we do that, I think we need to have a motion from Plan Commission if we're intending to forward the other 7 to the next hearing.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that motion. So the motion will be to move to continue the petitions, namely the 7 ordinances that we don't plan to discuss tonight, to the next hearing, and that's or to the next subsequent hearings. That's ZO 0321, ZO 0421, ZO 0621, ZO 0721, ZO 0821, and ZO 0921, and finally ZO 1021.
A second.
Okay, motion and a second to continue 03, 04, 06, 07, 08, 09, and 010 to subsequent hearings. Thank you for that, and I will call the roll. St. John,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for doing that. And now we'll go back to the presentation. So as most people know, but just as a refresher, what we're doing here tonight is starting the public hearing process of the final step in the update to the Unified Development Ordinance and official zoning map. So we adopted a new zoning text for the UDO. It became it became law in April of 2020. And what we've been doing is working with that draft or working with that code since this time and identifying issues that may need to continue to be addressed or new issues with administration of that code. When that code was adopted, a conversion map was adopted so that the old zoning map was amended to have the new zoning district names, but no lines were changed on the zoning map. And so what we are working with now is the conversion map, and what we are proposing is a new official zoning map. So we started a public outreach process in October of last year. And you can still visit the website that was up for that to see a public comment that was submitted and the various outreach efforts that were made and documents that were put together to explore and describe that particular draft. Based on the feedback we received during that process, we have amended those proposals and prepared the proposal of the map and the text amendments that you will see now tonight and the following nights when we meet. Just so everyone knows, these will go to Plan Commission or where we are now for comment and amendment and recommendation to council. Council will then be able to amend the text amendments that they receive. They will not be able to amend the map that they receive. They will either have to approve it or deny it. And so then those are the last steps in the process. The proposal that we've put together as our previous proposal for the draft of fall was as well is intended to further align the map and the code with the goals of the 2018 comprehensive plan. So this guide here I'm going to go through briefly, again, is going to be available on the website. You can use the link to get there right now, but we will put that up on the web page after tonight and has lots of information about what we're proposing. So the first kind of section in the presentation is about general text amendments. So these are the text amendments that appear in the first 7 text proposals, text petitions. There are 88 of those text amendments proposed. So they have, as I said before, been split up by the first petition is kind of general technical literal words missing or references that were wrong, things of that nature. We kind of pulled those out and put those in the first petition to kind of group and make those a little bit easier to kind of not have to sift through and focus your time on. And then we have the remainder that are what we would say probably not greatly substantive, but are things that, you know, maybe of a little bit more interest to the Plan Commission, items we discussed in the past and how they're changing a little bit. And so those are split by chapter, so subject of their chapter. So that is the first 7 petitions that you will see. And then these are some of the highlights that we kind of pulled out from petitions 2 through 7 that may be of interest. And then as we discuss those particular chapters on each night, we can go into much greater detail about these. But just as a bit of an overview, we are amending some of the regulations, proposing to amend some of the regulations related to ADUs. One, to put setbacks back to where they were under the previous code, which may be construed as an error the way it came through to the new code, but we want to make sure everyone understands that's going back. Changing the noticing requirement for that since it's a by right process. We've also worked a bit on some of the ag issues that we've talked about in the past, one of which is small livestock use and how we can make that work in some more areas of town. Also including addressing accessory agricultural structures and how our residential limits kind of don't really work for that type of use, which we saw with the Duncan Campbell rezone. The larger, farm-related structures that he had on the site couldn't be permitted without variance, even though they were appropriate for the area. So those are two kind of topics that we've discussed here as a group before that you'll see. We also have some here amendments to some different parking limitations related to multifamily or student housing, and reducing by right development maximums for student housing as well. That was a new use for us, you'll recall. And we are trying to find the sweet spot of encouraging development and also having the incentives included in code be attractive enough to be useful, so that we can help meet some of our larger city goals related to green building and affordable or workforce housing. So some of these others are they are a little bit more maybe wonky or staff oriented but we didn't think that they met the threshold of just being a correction. So we will discuss them at the hearings, including adding time limits to special event. We wanted to adjust the home occupation standards. They are pretty rigid and maybe not very, they don't really reflect the way people are working from home now. And, obviously that's been a huge change since the code was updated with COVID and everyone having to lots of people having to adjust to that and finding space on their homes or running businesses from their properties. So changing some of those regulations. And then probably the other big one that we'll discuss is modifying major site plan thresholds. Something that you are all familiar with is we have brought forward to you since the new code came in a number of site plans that were by right. So you couldn't actually do much with them. And that we have found create some confusion with other members of the public, not being clear about, what can happen at these hearings. And so maybe adjusting those thresholds so only larger projects would come forward in that situation. So Z00121 is the first petition, technical corrections. I'll talk about it a little bit more in detail here in a minute. But first, I wanted to use it to point out, if you are going to this story map, you can use these links to get to the red line document and also a table document. Those are also on the website separately, but outlining the proposed changes for each petition. So as I mentioned before, these are quite technical. And there are 16 of these, some appearing multiple times in the code, but most of them just one-off changes that need to be corrected just for clarity in the code. Z00221 we'll also discuss this evening. Chapter 2 covers basic standards for our base zoning districts and also regulations for our PUDs and then downtown overlay zoning districts. And then so there was actually only one left in here after we took out all of the technical amendments. It's just one that we wanted to include to clarify that a step back over a certain height is for the entirety of a facade on the street as opposed to just a portion. And that is a carryover from the old code, and the way that it carried over kind of made it lose some of its heft. So we wanted to correct that so that there was no confusion. Z00321 and Z00421 are probably the two that we would, I think, probably spend the most time on outside of the RE and Plex discussion. Chapter 3 is use regulations. So this is where the allowed use table is located, as well as use specific standards. This is where a use is designated, whether it's permitted or conditional. And then what use specific standards apply. Just so everyone knows, we are proposing changes throughout the code related to RE and or the Plex amendments, but those are pulled out of these chapters and put with those petitions only. So when you look at the documents for chapter 3, you won't see the proposed use specific standard changes for plexes because that is only located in the Plex petition packet. So just so you know, when you're looking through there, for example, or you might not see that RE is stricken because that is only in the RE petition packet. So that there wouldn't be kind of confusion about what you're approving or not when you're looking at multiple petitions. So Chapter 3, again, as I said, it covers a wide array. It's all of the uses we have and where they're allowed, and then some particular standards that are required for them. So this particular petition deals related to allowed uses. There are quite a few, and we will get into those later. Just as a kind of list here, some of the ones I mentioned earlier are located in this chapter, related to changing some of the student housing by right allowances. And then there are small kind of ticky-tacky things like how exactly should we count fuel dispenser hoses. Those are things that you may care less about, but we need to be clarified in order for proper administration of the code. And then some of the ADU regulations I mentioned are also located in this chapter as well. And then there are 28 of these. So this is more heft numbers wise, and then also probably details wise of things that people would be most interested in outside of the larger discussions. And then Chapter 4 is similar because Chapter 4 is our development standards and incentives chapter. So whenever you're doing any type of development in the city and you need to know more detailed development standards, this is where you find them, including dimensional standards, environmental standards, things related to parking and access, or your site building design requirements, landscaping and items like that, signage and lighting. The incentive section is also located in this chapter as well. So obviously that means that the proposals related or located in this chapter are related to design. And just as with Chapter 3, they're kind of all over the place because it's a very big, robust chapter. So again, when we talk about it on the night, I believe it's the 22nd, we will hope that you will have also looked at it beforehand to see if there are any that you have specific questions about, so that we can get through it in a expedient fashion while still covering any questions that may arise. So just as an example, the transportation plan was approved at a time when the text was being approved for the UDO. So some of the references in the way that we, for example, name streets changed. And so we need to match those so that can reference the proper plan and not the old plan. We are adding some other clarifying things, such as not allowing disturbance in a karst conservancy easement. The code does get to that in some other ways, but for many of our other environmental protection areas, it's very clear. So we want it to be clear here as well. And then we have proposed a couple of parking changes, including increasing the parking space allowance for medical clinic, clarifying again something from the old code that yes, you can have a gravel parking lot if it's edged in a single family zoning district. The way that came over when the text was altered for the new code wasn't very clear. And so we just need those things to be cleared up. And then we also found some things that were missing. So for example, architectural requirements in the mixed use student housing zoning district are much less detailed than they are for all of our other mixed use districts. So we want to add that back in. And then again, some smaller things related to our landscaping requirements that we have found over time either aren't working or need a slight adjustment. So there are 27 in this chapter. So these will be kind of the two, I think, hefty ones that we'll deal with on the 22nd. We really tried not to include anything that we thought we could kind of easily work without. They're all things that would help the administration of code, and more importantly, help someone who isn't used to reading code be able to read it and understand what it means without having to kind of put the pieces together. So that is especially for these two, that is kind of our goal, is obviously making sure that our regulations are accessible and as clear as they can be so that a layperson could read them and be able to know what's required. So again, just as a reminder, you can use the two links at the bottom of each petition to go to the table and or red line for that petition chapter. So chapter 5 is our subdivision standards. So that regulates any type of subdivision in code or in the city, excuse me. That also includes language for those how rights of way adjacent to subdivisions are treated. And so that is one interface that we kind of are looking at again and again here with looking at a few times here with these updates. So this is another one we'll look at tonight. And there are only 5, so not too terribly detailed. And then chapter 6 is administration and procedures. So in chapter 6, that's where it lays out for us, for staff, and then also for the public who are interested, of course, our permits and approval processes and what's required for each type of petition from everything we do, from building permits all the way up to PUD site plan requirements. That is located here. All of our certificates that we issue, our certificates of zoning compliance, and recommendations for occupancy, that's all outlined in this chapter. So this is where we get into one that I mentioned earlier, where we we are suggesting that we amend the minimum requirement for major site plan review. One kind of unexpected thing that we have found now a couple of times since the code has come in is a property that, for example, has 3 units and then is trying to add a 4th. So then they meet the requirement of increasing, they more than exceed the requirement for major site plan by increasing their number of units by more than 10%. So that's obviously not kind of what the code is, not trying to have someone who has a 3-bedroom or a 3-unit apartment building in the multifamily and wants to add a 4th unit. That is necessarily something that we think needs to be on your docket if they can meet all of the code requirements. That adding 1 additional unit, 1 or 2 units, we don't think was the intention of this type of requirement. So we are proposing to delete that. And then we are proposing to amend the minimum unit threshold for a major site plan for a larger apartment, for an apartment complex. So from 30 to 50 units. Again, 30 was, we wanted to try it out and see if we thought that seemed reasonable. We feel that it's probably too low. Again, because these projects are by right. And then we do want to have transparency, of course, and have the Plan Commission see those large projects that may have larger effects on the community or interest of neighbors. But we just think that threshold may be potentially in the future bringing in too many projects. A 30-unit project can be quite small. We are doing a couple of things in the code to sync the floodplain regulations with state code. They requested that we do that, and we did work on that before the last update. There were a couple of small things that we missed because they weren't in the particular floodplain section, or we wanted to see if we could make that administrative correction to make sure that was something that we thought we could work for us. So we have a couple of those in as well. And then, so in this code, in this petition, there are actually only 4. So this is also kind of a small one. So when we see it on the 22nd, one of the ones that may take less time unless you all identify things that you would like to discuss as well. And then the last chapter petition is chapter 7. This is our definitions chapter. Some of these, again, are more for clarification for practice that's been in place for some time, and maybe the wording changed a little bit from the old code. So for example, the first one listed here, in the city of Bloomington, you can have multiple buildings on one lot that and have more than one use. It's been that way for a long time, and we do want that. We want to maximize the use of our land as much as we can. And the way that that change came over into the new code makes that difficult, or makes it unclear that that is allowed. So that's something we're trying to clarify. We also lost a use from the old code, upper floor residential that we used to have in the downtown. And so instead of putting that back in and adding another use to the table, we've modified the definition of multifamily to incorporate that if you have units above commercial, then you are considered multifamily by definition. So you are allowed in areas where those are allowed. One thing that we noticed almost immediately when we started using the new code is that the ADU regulations adopted by council allow for one family to live in a house on a lot and then another family to live in an ADU. And they made that change in the ADU regulations in the substantive chapter part, which was great. But then it's also defined in family. And what it says in family is that it's one per lot. So we are switching the family definition to match the one that was approved. We just think that was an oversight, but again, because that's something we've discussed in detail a lot in the past, we didn't want to list it as a correction because it may trigger some discussion. So we're adding, as I said before, small livestock definition. We're amending the medical clinic definition to include birthing centers specifically. It has a number of things that it includes by name. And birthing center is not one of them. We have had interest from interest from birthing centers, and it's hard to administer whether or not they are allowed where medical clinics are allowed or only where hospitals are allowed. So we're explicitly adding them to medical clinics so that that's clear, as they have basically almost all the same outcomes. We are also adding the use firearm sales and amending the porch definition, which has given us some trouble over the years. Just to be clear that what you think of as an architectural porch is in fact a porch by code. So there are 7 amendments identified. And again, these are also kind of more for clarity purposes, similar to the first petition, but specific to actual code definitions. So we kept them out. Okay, so the first kind of content-based petition is ZO0821. When we adopted the new UDO at the end of 2019, and then it went into effect again in April 2020, one of the things that we did was create 4 new zoning districts, and one is the R1, residential large lot. We did that to kind of fill the gap between our very large RE zoning district, minimum 2.5 acres, that was more of a rural carryover and had been around for some time, and we have limited areas in town that was limited areas that were zone RE at that time, and we had carried those had been carried over, of course, in the conversion map because no lines were changed. And when we went to look to see where R1 would make the most sense, which was created in order to accommodate kind of a larger residential development pattern, but still not be quite as big, of course, as the more agriculturally focused RE. We found that really the lot sizes that made the most sense for R1 also made sense to remain or be rezoned to R2, just based on their surroundings. And that the other opportunity for R1 was likely going to be our existing RE zoning district areas. So then we started talking about, do we really need a large lot residential and kind of small lot agricultural district? Do we need 2 in our mostly urban community? So what we are proposing is that we will take RE out of the code, and that the areas that were previously zoned RE will become zoned R1. And so they will still be the largest lot minimum lot sizes that we have in town. And they will also still, of course, be environmentally protected by all of our other environmental standards, which I think was initially a concern when RE was created, that it also kind of was a placeholder for maybe sensitive lands because then it would be harder to subdivide. When we kind of actually looked at them, I'll have the exact numbers for you when we discuss this on the 22nd, but I would say, I think it's less than 30 lots that this affects from RE. And when we looked at them with their environmental constraints, the environmental protections that the UDO provides by specific types, so wetland or karst feature or steep slopes, would still preclude over subdivision of those areas because you would not be able to develop on those. So we think that they could still be protected while possibly offering opportunity for some more density to be added by using the R1 development standards. So what we'd be proposing is to remove RE from the code, and then we would zone the RE areas to R1. We took some of the uses that were in the RE that were not in the R1 and added those over that we thought would be appropriate. We are open to discussing if they should all come over. That may be something that that you all may look at and think about. We've had some interest from the public about specific uses and wanting to make sure that they're still allowed. So that may be a way to address that. But we are basically proposing that they actually only need to be one district and that it makes more sense for them to have the smaller lot size. Because as they develop, they are primarily residential. We don't have as many primarily agricultural lots, as may have been thought would occur at some time in the past. But the changing them to R1 would not, of course, require subdivision. And if the uses that are useful in the RE for agriculture remain in the R1, then those properties can still keep going on operating the way that they are, those few kind of agricultural focused properties that we do have. And so that's kind of how we're approaching that change. And then you can see that we would still be, so the uses would be all the R1 uses that were in the code, plus a few of the RE uses, and then the dimensional standards would be the R1 dimensional standards. And then our second subject-based petition would be the duplex, triplex, and four-plex petition. So that's 00921. And just for anyone who's listening along, the plan currently is to hear that in more detail, that topic in more detail on March 25th. So that will hopefully be a night dedicated to that discussion. Lots of public comment and questions from Plan Commission we are expecting. And so we will get into detail about that at that time. But for tonight, I will briefly go over what the petition entails. So the petition amends the locations where 3 uses are allowed, changes them from what is in obviously the current code. So that's a dwelling duplex, dwelling triplex, and dwelling fourplex. And then it also amends use specific standards associated with those uses. So this particular petition proposes duplex as conditional use in the R1, R2, R3, and R4 zoning districts. So you can see that here, conditional with an asterisk, meaning that there are use specific standards associated. And then the triplex and fourplex, these two here, as conditional in the R4 and nothing in the R1, 2, or R3. That's the current proposal. And then there are use specific standards for all 3 and those of the uses, duplex, triplex, fourplex, and those have all been proposed to be amended as well. So you can see here in the map on the right, areas where a duplex would be allowed conditionally. And then we have other maps you can choose to, you can change the map. You can see here Obviously, the R4 areas that allow triplexes and fourplexes are a lot smaller than the areas that would be allowing duplex. That is, I would say, in response to concern, obviously, lots of public comment about the uses in general, where they should be located, which ones are maybe too intense for most of the existing neighborhoods. And so we have really tried to propose something that we, as we said in many of the public meetings that we had, we do think that they're necessary. We do think that they are part of a larger larger plan to help increase housing in the community, help have more land available, the existing land, existing infrastructure available to more people. But we understand that people are very concerned about the character of existing areas. And so in this way, by making them all conditional and limiting where the more intense uses are, we hope to strike a balance there. So the conditional use criteria, again, for those who aren't just spending all their time watching Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, there are conditional use criteria that have to be met by any use that's listed as conditional in the code. And that would include, of course, these three. So they're listed over here on the right. There are 4 general compliance criteria that any petition that comes through Board of Zoning Appeals or Plan Commission has to meet. So those are the 4 at the top: compliance with UDO, compliance with other applicable regulations, utility service and improvement standards, and prior approvals. Those are all spelled out more in the actual code, but that is the title of each. And then for conditional uses immediately under that, there are actually 6 more. So consistency with comprehensive plan and other applicable plans. For example, if we have a greenways plan or environmental plan in the area that we would look at that's been adopted, providing adequate public service and facilities when that's appropriate for the particular conditional use request. And then the third is minimizing or mitigating adverse impacts, and that's broken into 4. So these are the ones, some of these I think are the ones that will be of most interest to members of the public. And if you've seen them before, they're standard, I think. Some of them are standard, and then some of them are a little more tailored to this community. So we have the not result in excessive destruction of natural, scenic, or historic areas of significant importance, and then no adverse impacts such as noise, smoke, odor, those types of things. This is for conditional uses where you may have something that's like more traditionally commercial or something in a residential area where it might be appropriate if you can meet these requirements. And if you can't, then maybe it isn't. We wouldn't necessarily want, your neighbor to be running like an industrial bread shop in their garage that was, creating a nuisance for you. But if your neighbor is, doing something on a smaller scale, and not meet these and being able to meet these requirements, then that may be appropriate. And then again, hours of operation, outside lighting, and trash. So those are kind of geared toward more when you're moving the scale up of whatever the use is for the conditional use, or having something that could possibly be incompatible. So number 4 is, I would say, the more Bloomington criteria. The petitioner shall make a good faith effort to address concerns of the adjoining property owners in the immediate neighborhood as defined in the pre-submittal neighborhood meeting for the specific proposal if such a meeting is required. So conditional uses can be heard by either the Board of Zoning Appeals or the hearing officer by code. As we did with the introduction of ADUs, the department would initially take all Plex requests to the Board of Zoning Appeals as opposed to the hearing officer if this were to be approved. One, it just is more visible, and it has more decision makers involved. Obviously, a 5-person Board of Zoning Appeals as opposed to a one-person hearing officer. It also is more public in that it is held in the evening, and it is typically on cats, and it's just something people are more familiar with than the hearing officer. The hearing officer sees very small kind of correction variances and things that non-controversial that can be done more quickly and with little impact on the neighbors. So when the ADUs were approved by council the first time, we took all of the ADUs to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so we would do that as well with plexes. Additionally, the director can require that an applicant attempt to attend relevant neighborhood association meetings, and we would do that as well. And we did that informally with the ADUs. And I say attempt to because some neighborhood associations don't meet regularly. And so what we found with the ADUs is that we would say, hey, you need to contact, your X, Y, and Z neighborhood association. And then that president or whoever is the kind of gatekeeper for that information would say, we're not actually meeting, this looks fine. And, there's only so much a petitioner can do if the relevant association isn't active. So that's why that's worded that way, but we would basically send them all to neighborhood association meetings. And that way they would stay, the neighbors could be as involved as they wanted to be. You, of course, also have your typical noticing requirement, which is 2 properties deep around on all sides of your property or 300 feet, whichever you hit first. And those people would all receive direct letters. And then the neighborhood association would, of course, reach out to whoever is in that wider group for comment if they were notified. Okay, so the use-specific standards, as I mentioned, have also been amended. We removed the provision that related the legality of the use to how the property was zoned under the previous zoning code. What it said before, the language was along the lines of, if this property is zoned R1 through R3 and was previously zoned R1 through R3, then you can do X, Y, and Z. If it wasn't previously zoned R1 through R3, then you can do something different. That is not easy to understand or administer, and maybe also not quite appropriate. An appropriate way to address where uses go based on how a property was previously zoned. So we're trying to leave the uses uniform across a district. So we removed that. And then we also removed, there was a provision included related to if a demolition permit had been pulled, then there were maximum percentage sizes you could, of the building that you could add on to and or rebuild. Again, that is not something that we have for obviously single family development in these areas. And we just felt that it was a little convoluted and maybe trying to get at scale for the neighborhood in a way that wasn't quite right. So we removed that. And we removed the 40-foot maximum width provision. You'll recall that at the hearing, I don't remember if it was a plan commission or council, local architect pointed out that while a 40-foot maximum width may make sense in a historic neighborhood, it isn't going to make sense in some of our post-war neighborhoods. And that is a very valid point. And so we removed that as well. These provisions, we are trying to ensure that the buildings that are built under these uses are compatible. One way to do that is leaving in the requirement for having general shapes of certain architectural features having to match those on your block face. And there may be other ways to do that as well that we're open to kind of talking about or thinking about that are not included yet. One thing that we did include that's new is that we added, previously it said you had to have 2 exterior doors facing a street. That would make it very difficult for an existing home that could be remodeled into a duplex if they didn't have the space on the frontage. So what we changed that to is that if you're building a new duplex, you do have to build in the more traditional style of having 2 doors facing the street. If you're doing a remodel or conversion, you don't, but you have to have at least 1. So if if the idea is that we want the houses to be compatible with the surroundings, then having a house that looks like a single family but is a duplex also meets that requirement. So having 1 door or 2 we think is appropriate. Now, 2 two additional use specific standards that we've included that are not design specific is one, that if the property owner or hand registered agent has notices of violation on file with our department for the prior 3 years, they're not eligible for filing for conditional use requests for this use. One of the concerns we heard from a number of members of the public was worry about kind of proliferation of undergraduate rentals, and not that all of them are causing issues, but that some do, and that then it is maybe difficult if there are absentee landlords or agents that aren't kind of compelling those tenants to be good neighbors. So this provision, while that won't entirely address that issue, does kind of, we think, get to kind of maybe the a certain section of the actors in our community who are, you know, landlords or registered agents for properties and do have kind of ongoing issues or do pop up fairly often for compliance issues that could be, that are detrimental or annoying to the neighbors. And that if those kind of repeat visitors, you know, are behaving that way or operating in that manner, that maybe that's not the, maybe that they should not be eligible for this type of use, which we think, you know, is appropriate, but obviously appropriate only in certain circumstances. So that's why we included that. And then at the bottom here of the list, we also have included that if you receive a conditional use approval for your property, that conditional use approval effectively creates a buffer around your property, so 150-foot buffer. If you have a duplex approval on your lot, then within 150 feet of your lot for the time period of 2 years, no one else can receive a conditional use approval for a duplex. So what this provision is attempting to address is the concern that we heard from some individuals during the public outreach process, that they're worried about their entire block or entire neighborhood turning over into plexes and kind of losing the fabric of what's there. And in this way, that kind of slows the process down a little bit while still making it possible. We think 150 is appropriate based on block length in much of town, and that 2 years, that if you're going to get this approval, you know, 2 years is plenty of time to kind of get the project off the ground and then reopen the option for the next person. And so we think that this can help not only spatially spread out the use, but also temporally spread out over time. And that is why those are included. So triplexes and fourplexes require the same conditional use approval as I showed before, the 7 general ones that all conditional use approvals require. And then we did amend their use specific standards as well. We added in the notice of violation provision. We removed the references to previous zoning designations as well as demolition addition limitations. And then again, allowing for existing structures to maintain 1 exterior door and up to 2. We think that we want the buildings to look appropriate and in line with the surroundings, and that by kind of limiting or regulating how the building interfaces with the street is going to be the best way to get to that. Okay, almost done with this part. And the last is the proposed zoning map. So again, we will discuss this in a lot more detail at the zoning map meeting. I wanted to go into a lot, kind of a lot of detail on the Plex one, just for the regulations, so that those who are here interested in that could kind of hear what that new change is going to be. This map hasn't changed a ton since what you saw at the public outreach draft. So we mapped 4 new districts, the mixed use student housing, the public open space, the R1 I mentioned, and the R4 as well. Those came in with the new UDO. The MS district process, we were looking at those areas that meet comprehensive plan goals. Gateway North was identified, the Urban Village Center and Indiana and 10th. we made some changes and took out some IU owned properties here in this area, and left those institutional. And then we also added an area here by the new hospital learning center campus, already largely rental and mostly probably student housing, and will be have opportunity to redevelop probably in the life of this UDO. So identifying those areas that students could be appropriate there as well. We added that since the last time you saw this map. And we also removed the node at 3rd and Jordan and changed it back to commercial, which we think is appropriate and scale-wise, use-wise, to focus on commercial there as opposed to student housing, as well as scale. Parks and open space, this hasn't changed. You know, the places that we identified as city parks, and now we'll have a district that makes sense and separates them from other institutional uses and the types of uses that they do there, so that they can be a little more specifically regulated. And then the R4 district pulled back quite a bit from the version that was put out in the fall, about 75% smaller than what was originally proposed. We came back and looked at the focus from the comprehensive plan and how it is described in the UDO. And we limited the areas to PUDs that met the R4 district's either dimensional standards or allowed uses, as well as we tried to focus on edges, edges of neighborhoods or areas that are neighborhood adjacent and also maybe adjacent to more intensive zoning districts. So for example, along 3rd and here on the east side of campus, circling this kind of southeast portion of campus. And then we have along Hillside in between Bryan Park and the larger collector road of Hillside. And so narrowing the focus of where those should be. And just as a reference, all these maps are zoomable and you can get in there or look at the interactive map on the website to search your property if you are interested to see which designation you are. Okay, here we go. And then we had, we looked at what we were calling ears. They're like correction lots in some places or areas where the designation didn't quite align with the goals of the comprehensive plan, or there was a split zone or likely future use because of changes of the surroundings no longer match what the zoning district was. And some of the things we did there were, were some more RM a little bit north of town, where we had previously been showing R4, but was almost entirely surrounded by RM. So switching those over to RM, we added some commercial, or excuse me, mixed use along the 7 line to encourage commercial and kind of redevelopment, residential growth along that new amenity, address split zone lots and some corrections that we had found just through the administration of code or having people contact us. And then the other big one is the rezoning of PUDs. So we analyzed 119 PUDs. That's how many we have. And we were looking to see, we looked at all kinds of criteria, including when they were approved, what the uses were, what the underlying zoning was at that time, surrounding zoning. The last year, something had been approved on that, whether or not they were built out. And then we are recommending rezoning of 102. So all of the ones we're recommending hit one of the following triggers. They're at least 95% built out, or the preliminary plan is basically abandoned. They basically didn't develop, or they're not proceeding along the lines of what the original PUD was. So basically it comes down to being mostly built out or having almost no development there. So the changes since the last time you saw this are that we took Sudbury out and proposed to leave it as a PUD. And I think there's one more. Brian, what's the other one? If you're there, sorry.
The Motel 6 site.
Oh, the Motel 6. So Thank you. So one of the things that we had looked at, and the reason that those two each came out, was that we had said in other PUDs, if development is occurring there or has occurred within, a couple of years, then we would leave it as a PUD. It's still functioning. And so that was the case for both of those. And so we swapped those back to PUD. There's information here about the Bloomington Hospital relocation. In the interim of the fall public outreach draft and this draft, the Bloomington Hospital Site Redevelopment Master Plan report was finished. So we matched the districts with what they were proposing in that document. You can see there is some residential R4, R3, RM along First Street, and then most of the rest of the site is different scales of mixed use, which of course would also allow residential. And that is the last of what I have. So we can thank you all for hanging in there. We can do questions about that, or we can go through the three that we want to do tonight and kind of save the rest for later. I think we're open to either preference.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, thank you, Jackie, that was great. But what I'd like to do is, I think we need to have a little bit of opportunity for commissioners to ask questions on the sort of broader set of changes, only because we may need to, if we're considering any additional amendments to those, there may be some clarifying questions that commissioners want to ask. So what I'd like to do is just have a brief period. If any commissioners are thinking about submitting any amendments to these amendments or additional amendments, this would be an opportunity to ask some questions, and then we'll move into consideration of ZO 0121, the technical corrections, and kind of get into the regular flow of the meeting at that point. So are there any questions from commissioners, and keeping in mind that we will have an opportunity to dive deeper into each one of these as we go. So this would really just be, if you need clarification on something you think you might want to submit another amendment for before our next meeting, this would be the time to ask those clarifying questions. So we'll go to that now. Any questions from commissioners?
It's a lot.
I see Commissioner Kinsey has a question.
I just have one quick one, I hope. Just clarifying the RE district zone and its deletion.
Yes.
Is there an easy way to see what sections have been, or what uses have been moved or not moved? I don't know if you can just point. I saw that table, but I think there's more too. For example, one specific one I'm looking at is orchards.
Yes. Ryan, oh wait, it might be in this. Hold on. Let me see.
Yeah, it won't be there because it's only permitted in conditional uses. So accessory uses, you'll want to go to the red line document.
Say it. Oh my gosh. Can you say it louder?
Yeah, sorry. You'll want to go to the red line document because this is only permitted in conditional uses, whereas that would be an accessory use.
Yeah.
Oh, right. But she's saying, so here, okay, thank you. So these are the RE that were in, and then these are the R1 that we're proposing. And this is on the website. It's a separate story map that shows the changes just since fall. So it has a little bit more detail. Since we weren't doing RE tonight, I didn't put this all in here, but it shows what the RE, so for example, you can see the orchard or tree farm commercial, and then two tables down that we didn't include it. So that was one of the ones where we're thinking maybe we should just bring them all over, because once we did it, then it was like, how many did we really leave out? Like not that many.
Right. That's
but
what I
yes,
was trying
also
to
you
get.
could see it in the red line too.
Okay. Yeah, I think that might be something to think about for an amendment. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I can't see the whole
Okay, this is Flavia.
gallery, so, okay, yes, go ahead, Flavia.
Yes, just a quick question, just for clarification. You said that the Sudsbury area, it will remain a PUD. Are there many areas that are remaining a PUD because of how unique it's
Good
developed?
question. Good question. So there are 17 PUDs that are remaining. Some of them, I would say I have characterized in the past, I do think it's accurate to say we left because they are unique. They don't easily switch over to existing base districts. So 2 examples of that are South Dunn and Renwick. That those 2 have such detailed and large PUD development standards that finding matches for them was difficult, and we did leave those. So Sudbury, we do have the informal Sudbury plan that was done by the city a couple of years ago. That is what you saw in the fall draft. We matched that. But then when we started thinking more about how we had drawn that line of where to do the PUDs, that they really should have fallen on the side of they're actually still building. They are building on the south side. And then of course, also PUDs that have been adopted recently, like the Tyler Curry PUD or the Trinitas PUD, we left those as well.
Yeah, I just, my question, I guess, is Sudbury still undeveloped?
Yeah.
In some parts, correct?
Yes, it is undeveloped in some parts, correct.
Yes, so if we don't zone it, the zone we want it to be, can they do anything with it? I guess that's my question.
Okay, good question. So they can if they meet the PUD requirements. Part of their PUD requirements are building a very large road. That's why they haven't thus far. So we will, I think we weren't sure whether or not we would include them in this process. And obviously initially thought that we would as part of the rezone. At this point, unless they meet those PUD requirements, then they will not continue to develop beyond what they already have approval for, which what they're doing right now is a multifamily that you've seen in the southwest portion, and then building some single family on the south end. Once that's done, they will have hit a ceiling unless they build what's required by the PUD. We will, I believe, continue to work with them to see if there is something to be done to help the development go along without just blanket rezoning all of the acreage. Does that make
Thank
sense?
you. Okay. Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners as it may relate to additional amendments? Not seeing any. Okay, well, we will move on then to ZO01-21, technical corrections. Before we do jump into this, I know we have a lot of folks who had just joined the meeting after we started, so I'll just recap. We've just heard an overview of all of the proposed amendments. We are going to tackle 3 of them tonight. Just the technical corrections, amendments to chapters 2, the zoning districts, and amendments to chapter 5, subdivision standards. So if you are interested in commenting on any other amendments, we will get to those in future meetings on the 22nd and the 25th. And so public comment tonight will be limited just to these particular sections that we're considering the amendments on tonight. So again, technical corrections, chapter 2, zoning districts, and chapter 5, subdivision standards. So we'll start first with the technical amendments. Jackie, was there anything else that you wanted to add on this before we?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Unless anybody has any questions, I can give more information about what those are. And I can pull up the list of those as well. Obviously, it's very small, but I mean, we can zoom in on them if you have questions about particular ones.
That's great. Yes, thank you. So again, these are just technical corrections. These are primarily places where we had typos or incorrect references to other sections. Shouldn't be anything substantive here, but we need to adopt these and make sure that that the code is correct and usable and readable. So any specific questions about these technical corrections from commissioners? Seeing none. All right, we will go to public comment now just on these technical corrections. So if you want to speak on these technical corrections, click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen and then click on raise hand, and Jackie will be able to recognize you. If you have any trouble with that, alternatively, you could send click on the chat button and send a message directly to Jackie or myself, and we will recognize you that way. So we'll give a moment to see if there's any public comment on the technical corrections.
Oh, we've got one here. Go ahead, Dave. You should be able to unmute.
Okay, let me give this a try here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We got you.
I just had a quick question. One of the red line amendments, it's on page 14 of the packet. It swaps in 15 feet for 10 feet as the rear building setback. And that seems not exactly like a typo. I mean, that's 5 feet worth of substance, it seems to me. So I was wondering if some clarification on that could be provided. And I do understand that that there's no obligation for staff or commissioners to answer questions that are raised, but to me, that didn't feel like a typo. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on the technical corrections? Going once. Going twice. Any comment on the Facebook feed, Jackie?
Oh, good question. I think, Keegan, are you looking at that? I can do it too. Just a sec, sorry.
I am. There are no comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, we are back to the commission then. Are there any additional questions from commissioners or comments or a motion on ZO-01-21?
I would like to
Go ahead.
address the Dave Askins question. So Jackie, would you mind describing that shift from 10 feet to 15 feet on the rear setback on page 14?
Yes, okay, I'm, hold on, I'm not looking at the packet exactly, just a second. It is a consistency issue in that you can see, I think, oh shoot, I believe it's these ones that he's referencing, is that correct? For RM and RH?
I think that's
Basically,
right.
there are two tables in the code that have the same information and they had two different numbers. So one said 10 and one said 15. 15 is matches other similar districts, is the more standard number. And so 10 was, in our estimation, just an error.
Thanks, Jackie. Any other questions from commissioners? Karen, go ahead.
Thanks. It's kind of along the same lines as Dave Askins' question right below that. Jackie, do you want to go ahead and talk about the jump from 25 to 40 also on the minimum landscape.
Oh,
Which
yes.
is, yep.
Sure. So that is, again, the numbers there should add up to 100. And so the other number was 60. So it's 25 and 60, maximum impervious surface 60. It should have been 40 to match. So that makes it consistent with the other districts as well.
Other questions from commissioners? Would
Jillian, did
someone
that
like-
answer your question? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, I think it would be helpful to clarify if it's the table that has the correct information is 04-2, if I can read this very small print correctly. So that's the correct one.
Yes.
Sorry, it's hard to flip through the whole.
No, that's fine. Let
Plan
me
Commission.
let me look as well. Yes, table 04-2 has the correct information.
Yeah, so that's what it's 027 and 028 now will correspond with
With-
what's in
With
04.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt there.
Oh, no worries. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Or would someone like to make a motion on ZO-01-21?
I'll motion to approve the technical corrections that were just covered in ZO-01.
Sorry, Jillian, we have to do the motion first for,
Yes, to suspend the rules.
yes.
Yeah, sorry, we first need a motion to suspend the rules
Got
to allow adoption of this amendment with, to forego the second hearing
Yes.
in order to consider adoption of this
So
amendment.
each, and just to clarify, we'll need to do that on each one first.
That's correct.
That's the first step. Okay. Yeah, so let's do that first then. I will
Put it up here on the screen if you need it.
retract my previous premature action.
Sorry.
And instead say motion to approve, a motion to forego the required second hearing for this ZO-1, 01,
-21.
21, yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to suspend the rules to forego the second hearing for ZO-01-21. We have a motion and a second. Let's, do we need to call the roll on
Yeah, I
these?
think we have to on all Zooms now.
Okay, well, let's
Okay.
call the roll.
Great. Kate,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we now would be looking for a motion to adopt. Now that we've suspended the rules to forego the second hearing, would someone like to make a motion
Sure, I will.
for adoption?
I will return to my motion to adopt ZO-01-21, the UDO technical text amendments. And these are technical corrections only. I don't know, Jackie, if you have the next, if your next slide is that very recommendation or not?
Yeah,
Or-
so the second sentence here, I don't know if you can you see these slides? Okay, sorry,
Yeah, we
I
got
have PowerPoint, we're not friends. It says, yeah, so second sentence here that you recommend that the plan commission forward to city
Great.
council with a positive recommendation.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to forward ZO-01-21 to the city council with a positive recommendation.
Burrell,
That's,
oh, sorry.
go ahead. Yep, we'll call the roll.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
9-0, thank you.
Okay, so that motion carries. We will now move on to ZO-02-21, amendments to Chapter 2 zoning districts.
So it's just
Jackie?
one.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. It's
Go
just
ahead.
this one. To clarify that you can't, it's basically so that you wouldn't come in and say, in the downtown where you have to have the 4th floor pushed back, that you wouldn't say, oh, I'm only pushing back half. And then now we've got, a full 4-story facade along the road, which we're trying to avoid. So it's just adding the word all to this provision.
All right, so this is a one-word amendment.
Sorry.
Do any planning commissioners have any questions for staff about adding the word all here?
I have a quick question about this. Jackie,
Go ahead, Beth.
has this been an issue for developers? Have they come and said, we want to be able to have more flexibility on this kind of thing, or no?
No, I think it was just something that we identified as staff that was like, this is kind of maybe too loopholey and we don't want to open it up unnecessarily. We think the intent is clear from, the way that the regulation has been in the code now for some time. The intent of Planning Commission and Council of what it's supposed to be. We just were looking for it to be slightly clearer.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? All right, we will go to public comment then on ZO-02-21. If you'd like to make public comment, click on the participants tab, click on the raise hand button, and we will recognize you, or alternatively, just click on the chat button and send a message to Jackie or myself, and we'll try to recognize you that way.
And I'll clarify, Beth, actually, Eric's on, but I did, I think the Johnson's Creamery or one of the other ones we did downtown did ask about it, and that's how it came out.
Okay. Recently, or you mean historically?
Recently.
Oh, okay.
I'm not seeing any raised hands or messages, anything on the Facebook feed.
No.
Okay. All right, well, we will come back to the commission then. Would someone like to make a motion? As a reminder, we first need a motion to suspend the rules to forego the second hearing on this petition.
I'm happy to make that motion to forego the rules for the second hearing.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to forego the second hearing on ZO-01-21. Let's call the roll.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and Burrell.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, motion carries. We now would be looking for a motion regarding the petition itself. The staff recommendation is to forward to the City Council with a positive recommendation.
I'm also happy to make that recommendation that the Plan Commission forward ZO-02-21 to the City Council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
and Herrera.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion carries as well. We are now on to our final petition for the evening. This is ZO-05-21, amendments to Chapter 5, the subdivision standards. This is just a little bit more than the previous two, but still fairly minor. Jackie, would you like to give us an overview of these changes?
Yep. So there are 5 here. The first is that we have found, so in the code right now, tree plot width minimum in a residential area is 7 feet. But in some, on some roads in residential areas in the transportation plan, the minimum is 10. So what we would like to change it to is that the minimum be per the transportation plan. I'm sorry. Yeah, per the transportation plan or 7 feet, whichever is greater. And so then that incorporates the transportation plan rules or guidelines into the actual rules. And then we have a similar situation here with sidewalk or multi-use path widths. Sometimes the transportation plan calls for them to be larger, so we want to make the rules be able to accommodate that. And then, of course, just so you know, there are situations in the code where if it's physically not possible for those things to be wider, then the director is able to approve smaller widths. The third one is carryover that didn't quite make it exactly the right way from the last code. So the regulation says all new residential lots shall have frontage on a public street. The way that it was in the old code was that all new single family residential lots shall have frontage on a public street, so that lots with other types of residential, for example, large multifamily, which we sometimes see off of the road with a connecting driveway, do not have to have that connection. So we wanted to put single family, the wording single family back in. We're also including duplex, triplex, and four-plex, so that those would be treated the same as single family, where they could not be built unless their lot has frontage on a road. And then we have, let's see here, adding missing language from the previous UDO. I mentioned, or I'm sorry, I didn't mention this one. It basically requires that in subdivision, if you have environmental features that are being protected on your site that you're subdividing, that those go into common areas. So that is the way that it was written in the old code, and we have found that to be an effective way to set those areas aside and keep them protected, as opposed to letting them kind of, we prefer that they be on common area than as opposed to in the backyards of private lots. And then this last one here is matching UDO transportation language. I actually don't think that's supposed to be strike through. I apologize. It's just changing the word neighborhood to the word local, I believe. So we'll have that a few times where we're trying to match the transpo language. And that's all.
All right, thank you, Jackie. Any questions from commissioners on those 5 changes? Commissioner Kinsey, go ahead.
I have one, just a clarification on the common area that have been added now from the old UDO. Is that everything? Was anything left out from that list?
No, oh, let me see the way, sorry, that it's worded.
So these are the, whatever, 5 environmental issues.
No, yes, that would be anything that we regulate environmentally that we would not want to be on someone's private property will then have to go into the common area. They're all included. They're this, yeah, they're the same carryover and the same ones that we identified, yes.
Okay. So they were all just a carry forward from that old, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the public then for comment on ZO-05-21. Again, if you want to make comment on this, click on the participants tab, then click on the raise hand. I see one raised already. Or alternatively, click on the chat tab and send a message to myself or to Jackie directly, and we will do our best to recognize you. Once you're recognized, you'll have 5 minutes to make comment.
Peter, you should be able to unmute.
Okay. This is Peter Dorfman from the Near West Side. I don't need 5 minutes. I have a simple question. There are several places in the amendments to the UDO where the term neighborhood is replaced by the term local. What's the intent there? That is
All
my
right,
question.
thank you, Peter. We'll do our best to get a response when we come back to the commission. Any other public comment on ZO 0521? Not seeing anything on Facebook?
No.
All right, then, we are back to the commission. If we have any final questions, or Jackie, would you like to just go ahead and maybe restate what's going on with that change
Sure.
from neighborhood to local?
So Mr. Dorfman's question is, we have a number of these where it says neighborhood street and then it's crossed out and it says local street. That is a technical road classification designation from the transportation plan. They used to be called neighborhood streets, and now in the old, I believe in the old, it wasn't called transportation plan, but the similar plan and thoroughfare plan, and now they're called local streets. So we are changing our nomenclature to match those, since it's supposed to be matching those regulations.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, would someone like to make a motion regarding the rules in the second hearing on ZO 0521?
I move that we suspend the rules that would require a second hearing on ZO 0521.
Second.
All right, the motion is to suspend the rules to forego the second hearing on ZO 0521. That's been seconded, so let's call the roll.
Great. Sandberg,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
and Cockrum.
Yes.
9-0, thank you.
All right, that motion carries. And I think now we would like a motion on the petition itself. The staff recommendation is to forward to the city council with a positive recommendation.
I move that we forward to the city council ZO 0521 with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
9-0,
All
thank
right.
you.
That motion carries. That is our final petition for the evening. Before we go, I'd like to just take a minute to kind of recap the process going forward. I know we have a number of folks who came in late to the meeting and may have missed the earlier portion of that. So we have a total of 10 petitions. We've got 3 of them down that we've already addressed this evening. Our next meeting, we've already continued the other 7 to our next meeting. So our next meeting will be on March 22nd. That gives us about 2 weeks to consider any additional comment from the public and any other additional amendments that commissioners may want to propose. So if you would like to propose an amendment, commissioners, you've got some time to do that. We'd really like them all to be into staff by the middle of next week so that we have a little bit of time to prepare those and make sure that they're in our packet for the next meeting. So you are welcome to propose any additional amendments between now and Jackie, what was the deadline that you wanted?
17th.
The 17th.
And we sent
Okay.
we sent a Google form for you to fill out if that's, if you're comfortable doing that. If you're looking at it and you're like, what is this? You can just email me. I mean, I tried to break it down into, what are you, what's the existing code reference? What are you changing? Why? Your name, basically basic info, but we're happy to help those be crafted if it's a little too staid to do it that way. So just let me know.
There's also opportunity for additional public comment online if you want to submit comments between now and then for regarding the upcoming amendments or other amendments that you'd like to see. And those forms are located where, Jackie?
Those are also on the project website. And let's see here.
At bloomington.in.gov/planning/UDO.
It's so many things. Hold on.
Let's make sure we get it right.
Yeah. It is bloomington.in.gov/planning/UDO/map, MAP. And then here at the bottom, you have written objection forms. If you're objecting, if you have general comments, you can submit those here closer to the top. And this is where obviously also you can look at like the other story map I mentioned, or the red lines are on this page as well. We did receive, I would say, maybe 5 comments, emails from the public after the packet went out, because this is an ongoing discussion and none of them had anything to do with the 3 we were going to look at tonight. We will put those in the next packet in case someone is here who sent one of those.
Great, thank you. So again, on the 22nd will be our next meeting. At that meeting, our intention is to address Chapter 3, Chapter 4. Chapter 3, the use regulations, Chapter 4, development standards, Chapter 6, administration and procedures, Chapter 7, definitions and amendments, and the deletion of the RE district zone. Our intention will be then on the following meeting on the 25th to address 0921, which are amendments relating to the duplex, triplex, and fourplexes. So if you want to make comment on that, if that's your primary issue, we will not get to that prior to the 25th. If we get through the entire agenda on the 22nd, the meeting will end and we'll go on. So at the start of our next meeting, we'll probably take our first motion to go ahead and continue those others to the following meetings, just like we did at the beginning of this meeting. And so if we don't get through the entire agenda on the 22nd, we may begin the meeting on the 25th, picking up wherever we left off. But with certainty, we won't get to 09-21 prior to the 25th. It's possible that it could start a little later. If things go really long with those previous ones, it's possible that 0921 may get pushed to the 29th, but we certainly won't get to it prior to the 25th. And we're off to a pretty good start here, so I feel confident we can stick to the schedule and get through these as planned. So unless there are any other final questions about the procedure. Yes,
I have
Jillian,
one
go
question.
ahead.
I just want to clarify. I appreciate the multiple opportunities for the public to both log objections and to send and submit public comment. And I think that's wonderful. And I wonder if, I understand that we'll see those in our packet when it comes for example, the March 22nd meeting. Will we not get, we as the commissioners get to see that prior to? Is there any way to make them more available to us as they come in, or maybe in batches? I remember when we were doing UDO, the adoptions originally, we kind of got them in batches. So it was a little easier to take them into consideration rather than getting them only that packet before.
Okay.
But I don't know what's possible.
Sure, we can talk about that. I can talk about that with Director Robinson, but I don't know why we wouldn't be able, for example, this Friday send you whatever we have, or and then before your 17th, if we get some, for example, over the weekend, we can send those on to you as well. And then we will still make them available in the packet for everyone to see. But yeah, getting those to you guys early, we'll just verify with legal that that's okay. And know why we wouldn't. be
Yeah,
able to.
please, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very important aspect of this. And I don't want to mislead the public into thinking all of a sudden we're going to get these all immediately if it's not legally appropriate. But I think that's a way for us to at least get some public opinion and views.
Yep.
Allow us to influence our own amendments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Jillian. I think that is important because you know we're not going to just have you know amendments that just come in from the public. So if amendments are going to be offered, they need to be authored by a commissioner, and so it's important that we all sort of stay on top of the public comment as it comes in case there is something in there that does inspire an additional amendment. So
We could
yeah, if you
definitely-
could.
I don't know why we couldn't. So I think we could definitely get those out. If not, we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Great. All right. Any other final questions from commissioners about the process before we wrap up our first session? All right. Well, thank you all for your patience, your participation, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on the 22nd.
Thank you all so much for being here. Have a good one.
Thanks.